in terms of what we think is being said, and then these stories then propagate more stories and more stories. So we're gonna practice listening, 2 types of listening. And I just wanna first introduce myself. Some of you might know me and some of you may not. I've been practicing a form of meditation that is Raja Yoga, but the meditation practice, the state of consciousness per se, is soul consciousness. And a lot of the conversation is going to be around this type of practice. And we're going to put it into context in terms of the moment. And I wanted to, the reason why I said leap forward with self-respect, a lot of times when we're leaping over something from one space to another, and it takes courage. It takes courage. So it's going to take a little bit of courage for us to leap forward in this moment into something new. And for us to keep that in mind, that it's going to take courage for us to understand ourselves and then take ourselves forward. But it's a process, right? And we have to be we need to really foster patience. And part of listening, I think it formulates, it really creates a lot of patience within us. So I think that's very important practice. The eyes, when we look through the eyes, we see different, we take in information in a certain way, in a very particular way, and also feeds the imagination in one way. But when we're listening, the imagination shifts as well. So we're going to practice these 2 different modalities of taking in information. So leap forward, we're going to be courageous towards understanding where we are so that we can leap forward with confidence and fearlessness. So with self-respect actually, I know myself, and because I know myself, I then have the courage in order to leap forward, to be with confidence. And so that's part of the thinking behind the title. And I think that that's very important for us to contemplate. How can I hold myself in this particular moment in order to have the courage for that newness that's about to occur, whatever that might be. So I'm going to ask you to please, again, mute or take off your camera so that we're just listening. And whenever you have a question, you have the choice to actually turn on the camera so we can see who's speaking or not. Or also feel free to chat with the moderator, the Brahma Kumari's moderator, and then the questions will be shared. Okay, so does everybody understand? Okay. So the 2 types of listenings we're going to experiment with today, one of them is a deep listening. And that deep listening, a deep listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. To listen only with one purpose, to help him or her to empty their heart. That's one form of listening. The other form of listening is active listening. Can anybody read that for me?
Sure. Compassionate listening. A deep listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You listen with only one purpose, to help him or her to empty their heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Active listening. A style of listening that holds each unique voice with deep respect and acceptance with the goal to understand. Imagine your ears truly hearing, your brain thoroughly processing, and the rest of your body showing that you are fully present in the moment and engage on what is being said.
Yeah, so this active listening is being in the present moment, just in the act of listening to what's being shared, to understand it. So there's part of the process is you're reflecting upon it You're listening and you're reflecting, you're working with what's being said to find meaning, to find understanding. And then as part of that exercise, what you do is you then reflect it back, you summarize it, and then you share it with the person who said it in order to create common ground. So a lot of your system in terms of processing is going to be activated in this process of listening. So we're listening to first hold a space for someone so that they can empty their heart so they can heal. The other is actively listening. I'm going to listen to what you're saying. I'm going to do my best to understand it, but it's not about what I think you said. It's just simply what you said and my understanding of that. And then I'm going to share that. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to summarize that so that we assure that we're understanding each other and we're on the same page. And that can create a beautiful type of communication. So I'm going to further the discussion on active listening because I think that many of us have heard the term, but let us help each other understand it. So pay attention. Often, especially in these days, we're so distracted, we're easily distracted. So we're being called to pay attention. Pay attention. What am I paying attention to? Set a comfortable tone that gives the speaker, so you're setting a comfortable tone. You're creating an environment for the speaker. Okay, so set a comfortable tone that gives the speaker an opportunity to think and speak. So it's also about the vibration that we're sharing with one another. So how am I sharing my vibration? Am I confrontational in my vibration? Am I at peace and I'm holding a peaceful space for the speaker so that they don't feel confronted, right? So it's about how are we holding space? Pay attention to how you're holding space. Allow wait time before responding. So think before you respond. Make sure that you are understanding. Don't cut speaker off. Finish their sentence or start formulating your answer before they're finished. Pay attention to your body language as well as your frame of mind. So it's on multiple levels. One is my ears are listening, my brain is processing, and my full body is actually in attention, but there's also one more dimension. How is my vibration? How am I actually creating the feeling? Be focused on the moment, be present in the moment, and operate from a place of respect. So we are here to hold each other in a respectful and healing way. Anybody would like to read the second one?
I'll read it. Withhold judgment, that second one?
Without judgment, yeah.
It says withhold judgment. It says withhold judgment.
That's right, okay. Withhold judgment.
Keep an open mind. As a listener, be open to new ideas, new perspectives, and new possibilities. Even when good listeners have strong views, they suspend judgment, hold any criticisms, and avoid arguing or selling their point right away.
Yeah. So again, I would love to invite everybody who is on to look at this as a sharing as opposed to somebody presenting something. And it's because we want to make it as dynamic because all of us have a certain intelligence and experience, and all of it is very, very valuable. So in order to enrich the experience, I encourage everybody to participate in the best way that they can so that we can actually learn from you, and we can also offer something in exchange. So it's really about an offering to each other. So just keep that in mind. If you're shy and you prefer not to, please feel free to ask questions by using the chat and sending it to the moderator. All right, so everybody, please, I encourage everybody to participate as much as possible so we can enrich the experience. Did everybody understand withhold judgment?
Yes.
So
Yes.
reflect. Don't assume that you understand the speaker correctly or that they know you've heard them. Mirror the speaker's information and emotions by periodically paraphrasing key points. Reflecting indicates that you and your counterpart are on the same page. So reflecting, another way of reflecting is you are sounding off what they said. So you're like an echo, repeating, trying to repeat what they said and indicating that you understand. The fourth one, anybody would like to share?
Well, I just had a quick question.
Yes.
If that's okay.
Yes,
So would
of
a
course.
useful way to do that reflective listening say something like, I mean, rather than just repetition, to say, so what I heard you say is, or if I understood you correctly, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what's the best way to set that up?
Yeah, exactly.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's exactly, because it's not just repeating, it's actually saying what you've understood the person said. So I understand that this is what you mean, and then you share it to assure that it is on the same page.
And is it useful to ask if you've understood correctly?
Absolutely.
To phrase it as a question?
Absolutely. It's always best to ask a question. A lot of times what happens in conversations, if people will just not take the time to fully understand each other. And because of that, a lot of misunderstandings occur. So taking the time to assure that we are on the same page assures clarity has been transferred. I understand this, and you understand me, therefore we understand each other. Now we can move forward to the next step. We understand what each other understands of each other, so therefore now we can work together. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of times that little step makes a big difference because it causes people to not fully engage in clarity. And in a conversation, it's always useful to be clear with one another. And it leads us to the next thing, clarify, right? So as I pose my understanding to you, it will clarify whether I understood it correctly. And there is no shyness, and it's always beneficial for you to be courageous to ask the question. So let's not pretend that we understood. Let's actually take a step to make sure we understood, right? Does that make sense?
Oh, yes,
Yes,
and I'm
yes.
so sorry, since I'm audio conferencing, I don't see the slide, so I apologize if I jumped ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. We will just trust yourself. So this is an exercise of trust, a big exercise on trust. We don't trust our ears enough because a lot of times we don't use them. We're present in a moment, but we're actually too focused on what we're seeing. And the seeing distracts us. It actually doesn't cause the hearing to be fully engaged. So it's important for us. That's why I thought in this moment when we're so inundated with imagery and this and that, and a lot of sound, I mean, I find that people are more busier now than they were before in many ways. So it's very interesting what's actually occurring. We're still the same people. We're still activating and doing. We're still activating in action. So although we may be in one place, we're preoccupying ourselves with lots of things. So let's keep that in mind. So clarification, I clarify what I understood so that I know that I'm in the same page. I'm not shy about asking questions because questions make it clear, right? So that's what I just did. I summarized it. So I summarized, I share what I understood you said, and I clarified that I was in the right, I was understanding correctly. And so here's the story that I have about what you said. So you summarize it, you you share the story that you're creating, okay? About what the person said, not of what you think they said, okay? Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay, so then you share it. So you share what you understood. So does it, everybody's on the same page, right? Any questions? So in this,
No.
Yes?
No.
Okay, so in this process, in this entire dialogue, let's not be shy about asking questions. If there's anything that's confusing, also look for clarification. And when you are asking the question, try to pay attention to, so try to pay attention to the last phrase that's being said and try to repeat it too. Not just repeat it, but it's a form of you training your mind to pay attention to what's being said. Okay, so these are some little tiplets in terms of boosting your active listening skills. So limit distractions. We are living in a world that has millions of distractions, right? It's amazing what happens. So silence any technology and move away from distractions so that you can pay full attention to the other person. Take note of the person's tone of voice and body language as well. We won't be looking at the body language necessarily unless somebody shares their image, but we're going to use our vibrational sort of sensing. We're going to listen, but we're also going to feel how it's affecting us, okay? So it's very powerful. We're going to use different instruments of our capacity. We have so many different capacities, but we don't use them enough. So now in just listening, I'm going to take it into my ear, but then I'm going to feel how it feels in the heart, right? So I'm going to pay attention. So instead of looking at the body language, I'm going to feel how the sound feels. Pay attention to what is being said, not what you want to say. So sometimes, even before the person's finished, you're already ready to say your story. You've created a story, right? Set a goal of being able to repeat the last sentence the other person says. This keeps your attention on each statement. Be okay with silence. And we're going to practice that. Another thing that we're going to practice is this thing that I call traffic control, where you take little intervals of silence or redirecting your consciousness, your mind, to a different spot, right? A different thought. And you're paying attention to what's happening. So we're going to practice that a little bit too. You don't have to always reply or have a comment. A break in dialogue can give you a chance to collect your thoughts. Encourage the other person to offer ideas and solutions before you give yours. Aim to do 80% of the listening and 20% of the talking. Restate the key points you heard and ask whether they are accurate. Let me see whether I heard you correctly is an easy way to clarify any confusion. Any questions? I think this makes it pretty clear, right? So this is the kind of listening. We're going to hold each other so that somebody can open their heart and heal. And the other is we're going to actually listen to what's being said, understand it, so that we can have common ground and clarity.
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, you talked about vibration a couple of times.
Yes.
And then you also talked about the body language. At this point, when you're doing the restating, you're basically reiterating or rephrasing what they said, but are you also providing them the conclusion you're forming with their body language and their vibration?
That's actually the last part. So the last part is where you share your ideas about what they said. Okay. So first you have to assure that you understand them clearly. And then the next process is that you can create with that. You can add to it. So first you understand that you're on the same page, and then you say, oh, but this is how I relate to that. Okay? So you basically share your position about it. Does that answer the question?
What I'm asking is, are you giving them your impression of their body language and what you're picking up of their vibration?
No, the body language sequence is basically you're paying attention to how the person's feeling, and why are we paying attention to the person's feeling or what you're getting from them, so that you can create the right space for them to feel comfortable as well, and for you to create comfort. So it's a give and take. You as a listener, okay, have an opportunity to give space. So you're creating space. If you notice that somebody is nervous, then what you do is you create the right space by creating a peace of mind. So in yourself, you create peace or calm. Does that make sense? So you're holding space for somebody to feel confident and courageous enough to speak without the worry of judgment or anything else. So we're actually creating the right vibration to hold someone. That makes sense?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here's the first thing. There's a lot of stuff to hear, just hearing, right? So now we're not going to say anything for like a minute and see how that feels after so much speak. And I want you to take notice of where's your mind, what kind of thoughts are coming into your mind, and then what kind of feelings are there, and then how's your body holding? How are you holding space for yourself and others? So in this particular moment, you know, there's a lot of interesting things are happening. There's new language being created. One of the new sort of phrases that I've heard is the new norm. And when I hear the new norm, it's very interesting. You know, it takes so much time for people to create habits, and also to create cultural habits, to create shifts in culture, shifts in how society operates. It takes time for a law to actually go into place, right? So it's the speed at which the new norm is happening it tells us that how knowledgeable. It poses the question of how well do we know and do we understand the world? Not only our world, but also the world outside. So the world, as we know it, is in question. Is it really in question? Are the trees going to change the way they operate? Is the air going to change its quality? In terms of we won't be able to breathe it anymore from one day to the next? Am I going to, as each one of us, going to become such a different human being that we were yesterday or a month or 2 months ago? Are we going to really shift that much? So these are questions that are really important, because there's a story being constructed, and that story is being propelled. And how we relate to the story and how we create becomes really important in terms of who we become. So who do I know, what do I know about who I am becomes very important. And, you know, one of the things that, although we really sometimes become there's not a very healthy relationship with change, but change is occurring all the time. So why in this particular moment are we so afraid of change? Why are we so resistant to change? There's many aspects of that. The resistance comes from a deep understanding of question on that is trying to take us in many different directions. And then what happens? Unless you're fully stable within yourself, how can you decide what direction to go? So this journey is going to be about learning a particular system, or even just applying whatever system you're already working at, and then turning it into whatever you require in order to evolve it to a place where you feel comfortable and also powerful enough to be able to maintain your own personal space outside of the outer influence. Does that make sense? So what is really being in question? What is really in question here is the big question. What is being questioned? And I think that's really important for us to understand what is in question. We're already creating new language to sustain this particular condition we're in. Is that what we want? Is that the direction? Is that the world that we want to construct and also support? We have to contemplate these questions. So when you're going from one form to another form, it calls for us to be ready to let go of certain things. And sometimes in this kind of, we're going to create a new dimension of existence, a new norm, as they say. What is this norm? This norm is going to call us to actually, somebody's raising their hand. Yes. Ram? Did you have a question? Ram? Okay. So, but if you do decide to ask the question, please feel free to do so. That's what this exercise is about. We asking questions and coming to exploring ideas. We don't have to come to an agreement about everything, but we can respect each other despite our differences of opinion. And that's the beautiful thing about the exercise. Can you let go of your present identity, religion, education? I mean, I want you to just look at this image, and for those who don't have an image in front of them, the words that are in front of us is present identity, religion, education, experience, culture, age, gender, political affiliation, social status, expertise, desires, preferences, judgments, values, competition, self-awareness, spirituality, and everything else that divides and causes conflict in the world. In that list of things that I just read, your memories, your relationships. So in that thing, that in those cluster of words, words are very powerful and they create worlds, right? They create imagination. So in those cluster of words, which word pops out to any of you? All of you are so unique that one of those words will pop up. One of them will stand out. Can I actually give this up? Anybody wants to share what's coming up?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. What does that mean to you?
Well, just as I'm listening to what you're saying and what's happening at any moment in time in this life, or we'll narrow it down, well, in regards to what's happening, you know, with the coronavirus, that it always brings me to the point of being aware, observing or experiencing situations, whatever the situations may be, even if it's just not saying anything, it always brings back to the thought of, you know, like, who am I, or what am I, what am I thinking right now, or, just it's like just awareness it's a constant, it's like a constant reality, like a reality to me. Just having that awareness, because so much is happening, in the external environment, within myself, my mind, and just everything is going on. So that self-awareness allows me to just not be as, agitated, or just kind of like puts me in a whole different perspective, just a whole different place.
Yeah. Anyone else?
For me, the thing that jumps out is control. I feel like, we all have lost a lot of control of what tomorrow is going to bring. And, how much control we have of tomorrow with with this pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. How much control do we have? That's a really wonderful question, because we're going to explore that deeply. We're going to go deep into that, and also the self-awareness of, the thoughts, of the feelings. Why is it important for us to be self-aware? Becomes a very important step in the leap forward, so that we can maintain a sense of self and a sense of alignment with what we think we are and what we say we are. Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It was very interesting as you were reading the list. I was thinking these are all these identifications that we all have, and I was thinking how easily it is to, surrender all of them in favor of the identity I truly wish to claim, which is myself as a spiritual being, as soul. And then you came later on in the list to self-awareness and spirituality, and I thought, well, these are the things that I would never want to let go of. I could shed all of those other false identities, but not those. So it was really interesting to, contemplate that for a moment. And, anyway, I was interested to see if you were making distinctions among all those identifications, and even to surrender the identity of ourselves as a spiritual being.
Yeah, the reason why those are there is because we know a lot. We think we know a lot, but actually what we know is actually very little, and we can always benefit from expanding from what we know. Because the minute you say I know, what happens is that you put a box around it, and the box gets smaller and smaller and smaller sometimes, because what you allow to come in as new is not allowed anymore, because you created this identity with even spirituality or self-awareness. I am self-aware because I'm paying attention. But there's always a blank slate that you can come back to, a sense of newness. One of the things that I practice every day is I go to sleep, and literally it's a form of dying. So I die to myself, to the body for that night, and then I awaken in the morning as reborn. And it's important for me to actually go through that process. One, it creates a different identity, and one of the things also that's very important, especially in spirituality, is because spirituality a lot of times also becomes as confined as religion. It's just a different form of it. So spirituality also has to be, the newness has to come into everything that we think we understand, because newness, change, is constantly occurring. So the world is expanding, actually. The universe is expanding, as scientists have found. So we have to be expanding with that. And the things that we've read, the things that we've been taught, a lot of those things are actually, like, literally in this particular moment in time, they're being disproven. So there's new thought in biology, there's new thought in physics, there's new thought in mathematics, there's new thought. So newness is very important. So that's why I place self-awareness and spirituality, because everything that we think we know needs to remain flexible to add to it. When we don't add to it, once we think we know, what happens is growth is not as easy for it to occur anymore. So we need to continuously grow, right? Do you want to just know, or do you want to constantly be expanding? So it's a choice, right? Do I want to be expanding into knowing more to more exploration and adventure, or do I want to be still here in this little box of what I know? So it's a newness that happens. It's a leap of faith that needs to occur. So am I just this, or am I more, right? Does that make sense?
And with you,
it makes sense, of course, and yet that's all these things you said are part of my very definition of what spirituality is, which is ever unfolding, expansive, change, new discoveries, the willingness to throw out who you were yesterday, reinvent yourself every day, and always be open to receiving more knowledge. So, I mean, everything you said to me is part of the very way I look at the spiritual process and self-awareness, which is never finite, on the contrary. So I guess we're on the same page, just maybe it's semantics,
Yeah, well, it's also about using words that also, not everybody's thinking the same way, right? We all have beautiful, unique experiences and ideas. And so sometimes what happens is that we assume that spirituality means the same thing because it's been experienced the same way by other people. So we make the assumption that others are sharing the same meaning and also experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually does. That points out to me that everybody's definition must be quite different, and very interesting that says to me that I wasn't really thinking in those terms, and perhaps not even being as allowing and embracing of others and how they might conceive of it. I mean, some people use the word spiritualism, which is, about communicating with, entities or discarnates, people who have passed on, rather than, a much larger process. So yes, I see that what you said before, words create worlds. Yeah. And how we can make our world very large or very small simply by how we interpret and define them. So thank you.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. This is about looking at what and then how that world affects the universe, right? So we're looking at both things, how and then how I affect the universe, and then how the universe is trying to affect me. So can anybody read the red message?
Are you ready to remember and reconstruct your reality?
Yeah. So I put it that way because, we are right now in this particular time, something happened where people just disowned their intelligence, and in many ways also disowned their own experience. And so I'm trying to create the dynamics where we're experiencing ourselves in being able to put a puzzle together, being to go beyond what we know as our own identity, our own sense of world, and expanding it to something larger, more universal. So are you ready to remember and reconstruct your reality? That's a very important point, because you can't leap forward without having that ability will you give yourself permission to reconstruct what you need to construct, to become whatever you need to become in order to fly? All of you? Are you ready to reconstruct yourself, or do you want to stay still?
Yes, ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready to reconstruct.
So one of the things that came out of this little exercise is some things are in our control and some things are out of our control. And it's important for us to understand what things are in our control and what things are not in our control, right? Is your body in your control? Are thoughts in your control or out of your control? Is death in your control? Right now, this relationship we have with the process of dying is one that is actually freezing us. Is that in our control or out of our control? Anyone?
Well, that death, the
Out of our control.
What was that?
Yeah, the understanding that I have, or I experience, is that because, again, as everyone has kind of talked about, and the understanding of that is the perception of that. So that, to see this word death, and I'll use the word normally when I see the word death, or on the physical aspect where, the soul has to leave their body. Yes, you get that experience is there where there's an extensive amount of fear. However, if, again, everything is kind of, I just understand it as perception, because just as you're speaking about and bringing the processing of these words forward, and experiencing them.
Yeah. So,
it's on a different level. Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's very important because words actually is the beginning of imagination.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to understand that connection with the words that we're using, because those words that we're using can actually debilitate us or strengthen us. And our relationship to those words actually create the world to occur a certain way. So peace of mind, is that in our control or out of our control? Death is not in our control, right? I mean, we have to remember, how old are all of you? And during the entire time from your birth to this present moment, how many times have you overcome an obstacle of illness, an obstacle outside of your body, an obstacle within your body? A lot of times, right?
Right.
So there's an intelligence that's there that we need to ignite again. We need to connect to it, trust it. Change is a constant thing. Change we cannot control because it's just naturally happening. It's part of a natural process.
Do you think do you think that this is what it's all about in regards to what's happening just with everything, that that death, like the fear is so great in addition to what's happening right now, that's what the drama is about? Like, it's kind of teaching that?
Yeah, well, it's like, I'm going to go into that actually further as we go along. The main idea here is we need to understand what is in our control and out of our control in ourselves and in the world. And then these two things combine. Because if we give our power away to something else, guess what? It takes a long time for us to get it back. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that when you give something away, you may not get it back. And conditions, the use of words, the use of story, causes upon my thoughts, about my feelings and my actions. Right now, we're in rooms and not able to fully engage our freedom to go out. So we have to also ask about that. So it's a lot of things to think about. We're going to take one moment. We're going to practice traffic control. So just, there was a lot of words there. I'm going to leave it there. Okay? So don't close your eyes. Just look at the words and look at your consciousness as we speak. Traffic control. I'm looking at my thoughts. What's the quality of my thought? I'm looking at my feeling. What's the quality of my feeling? I'm looking at my body. Is it anxious, nervous, or comfortable, calm, at peace? So what I'm noticing right now, and this is actually very, very, it's a beautiful thing that's actually happening. It's not a revolution where we're picking up guns, but it's a revolution of really becoming self-aware, as we said before. Self-aware, what does that mean, to be self-aware? And self-aware is, you know, depending on how deep you go, you can go into all these different levels of self-awareness, but there's a consciousness revolution occurring right now. There's those who want to continue the world as we know it, despite of what we know and all the stuff that actually needs fixing. We want to continue breaking each other down, breaking the nature down, breaking even the necessities of our own lives, water, air, earth for food. So we are in a position where there's a consciousness that is actually wanting to stay and a consciousness that wants to fly into something cleaner, more universal. And these two consciousnesses are in conflict at the moment. And that's what this conversation is about. How can we participate in this revolution of consciousness by becoming absolutely self-aware to the point where we can engage our power and move beyond fear? So the revolution is the body consciousness, and then the other side, soul consciousness. And you can see soul conscious, or you can see energetic consciousness. And the consciousness is just an awareness of I am the body, I need, I take. And preservation of the body is at the center of everything I do. In terms of myself, in terms of my relationships with family, friends, with work, and the outer world. And the feelings where that mindset, that consciousness comes from, and the effect of what it does is at the center. I am temporary. There's not enough, scarcity. I would destroy whatever gets in my way. I hoard. And it comes from fear. Fear causes all these different other progeny of fear to come out, anger. So beliefs determine our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So if I believe that life is a competition for survival driven by a variety of value systems, because when I live from this space, I have a value system for myself, and then I have a value system when I'm dealing with loved ones. I have a value system at work. I have a value system with the way I deal with the world. So it gets confusing. Sometimes I don't know who I am or what my value system is, because, you know, I've created so many different modalities of thinking, of feeling, of being. So it becomes very confusing. And that's what this period is showing us. We are not only in this survival mode, but we're also in this confused mode as to who we are and what we want to be. And even for those who have strong practices, we fall into these dynamics as well. So our words have the power to create worlds. We have to keep that in mind. Every single word that I speak, even before it hits my mouth, it gets expressed in my mouth, the thought is super powerful because it starts the process of creation. Literally, I'm manifesting, right? So consciousness determines our reality. So if we are living in this consciousness of limited time, I have to lie, I can't live in honesty because that sometimes I have to misrepresent these little tiny details that don't matter. I resist newness because I'm afraid that I'll lose what I have if something changes. I have to control. This whole thing is about trying to control death, illness. Can we control death and illness? I mean, we have to be practical in the way we ask ourselves questions. Can we control death and illness? And in the past years, when we have dealt with these types of things, this is not the first time that a human being has been infected with something that caused difficulty in its body. Nor is it the first time that it's happening now, because there's other things happening in different parts of the world that we're not talking about, that we're not focusing on. What has happened? And this moment can be terrifying, or this moment can be uplifting, elevating. Because the stronger we know how to navigate through this process by actually becoming stronger in who I am, not only who I am right now, and that's the beauty of being open to change, reconstructing your reality. If you're not open to reconstructing your reality, you'll remain in the same place. So we have to always remain open. I am open for newness. I am open to create a new vision of who I am. I am open to add to what my belief systems that are working. This is not about letting go of things. This is about adding more things. If something's working, why break it? Add to it. So it's about really looking at what is sitting there, what is sitting in me. Even the smallest trace, how am I participating in this happening? This is not an occurrence of one individual, it's an occurrence of a collective. The other form of consciousness, so that's the form of consciousness that is, you know, as we know the world right now, we've experienced it all this time, from the time that I was born to the present moment. All these occurrences have been occurring. It's not something new. Does it work? Can we add something that is from a different place altogether? And the answer is perhaps. And so there's the practice that I've been practicing for more than 20 years, and this is the soul conscious aspect. And it's literally training yourself to live from a different center. So if you live from the center of I am peace, and you filter everything through that, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to your thoughts? So I have, I give. That's where you're coming from. I feel abundant. I feel full. And therefore, of course, I'm going to give. I'm going to offer. It's going to be endless. There's going to be abundance. You have a sense of prosperity, contentment. So beliefs determine our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So whatever you've told yourself I am, that is creating whatever it is you're experiencing. My life is a cooperation. So the beliefs determine our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So if I come from this space, my life is a cooperation to energize the world with my natural virtues, peace, love, purity, spiritual power, and bliss. And from those virtues come all the other beautiful human experiences that we say we love and that we are searching for. Words have the power to create worlds. I am impeccable with my word. Consciousness creates reality. So when we begin to understand that there's many, and a lot of us have practices, a lot of us have different modalities of creating a sensation beyond the physical body. What's working, what's not working. Be honest with ourselves so that we can take out all the dirt, take out all the stuff that's not necessary, and renew and take that leap of faith. Trust yourself. There's an intelligence there. Trust your body. It has lots of experience. Since you were born until this present moment, it has gone through a lot of experience. So these two consciousness are at will. And the other thing about something like soul consciousness is you have to have the faith, but deeper than faith, you have to give yourself permission to know that it is possible. So the difference between values are temporary and they actually shift depending on what group and what place you're in. But virtues are constant. And a lot of times, so for anyone, tell me the difference between values and virtues. Anyone?
Is it that virtues are principles, but how those, but values are what we put our attention and desires into in a more, in a less global sense, and sometimes they're in alignment with virtues and sometimes not?
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else?
I would add that values are not tangible, but virtues are.
Yeah. So there's a belief that virtues are something we aspire to. You know, that's the highest possibility that we have to aspire to. We have to work towards it. In fact, it's not that at all. Actually, that's our nature. That's what's already there. And all we have to do is connect to it. Give ourselves permission to connect to what's already natural in us. But we've created a belief system that tells us that virtues are something we have to attain, something where it's about being in perfection. But in fact, it's simply as turning the switch. Light goes on, light goes off. Just that simple. In my consciousness, I connect with my nature. In my consciousness, I connect with this energy, this quality, right? Values are stuff that are belief systems of conduct and behavior and feeling and thinking and doing that come from the different aspects of our lives, the different organizations, the different people that we're involved with, our families, our nationality, all these things, and all of them are not fully aligned with one another.
So the breakthrough of this understanding of what's happening at any moment in time in terms of the thoughts, and the mind has many of those. So on the the awareness that you're speaking, the soul conscious level of awareness, that consciousness, would be the conflict between all the tossing of the words and trying to find a space, a quiet space, as you're discussing the soul conscious level in regards to the virtues, because again, the experience in and of itself is, because we're all of us are so different in the dynamics. And as I'm listening to you and experiencing this level of consciousness, it can get really kind of tossed silent, like when we go on and on with the belief systems and trying to organize those thoughts. And so again, that it could become a struggle, because belief and then the virtues, as it relates to just, experiencing those virtues, again, the conscious level of that and what's happening at this time with everyone. So do you think, this is really the dilemma, because all of the words, this and that, and the debates, it can get really, it could just totally set off to go in a whole different complex situation, when all along it's just kind of like, again, going back to the conscious level of what is, and stay there.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, because we are looking at exactly where we are. So when I say, is peace, there's a difference between believing in peace, and also there's a difference between peace is actually possible in our lifetime. Peace exists throughout the world. You see? And in order for peace to exist throughout the world, we have to actually believe that that's true. And there's more to this in terms of how that operates, in terms of the modality of how we use words and the power of those words, in terms of how it creates consciousness, and then how it affects reality.
Yes.
Yeah. So any questions? Any other questions? Or thoughts or confusions or anything?
I have a question.
Okay.
Going back to the topic from the beginning about listening before, starting to talk. I've had experiences where I'm talking to people and they want to talk to me, and they start, quote unquote, listening to me, but I'm not even done, and they're like rushing to just get their word and to get their story. And so I get the vibe that they're not really listening to me. They're just like trying to talk and not really listen. How do you address that situation? How do you handle it without being rude or mean?
Yeah, so you go back to the simple, what do you want to do, right? You want to create collaboration and cooperation, right? So always holding it in a tone that's beautiful, the tone that is peaceful, and a tone that is really about creating a request, not saying, not ordering or taking that approch, but simply requesting. I'm noticing that I'm noticing that you can benefit from holding a space. This is how it's making me feel, right? So you take responsibility for how you're feeling, and you're communicating how to improve it. So you're actually giving a solution. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I will practice that. Thank you.
Yeah. It's very powerful to just hold the space for each other. Regardless of how we're feeling, we have to actually remain anchored in these: I am peace, I am love, I am purity, I am spiritual power, and I am bliss. So I'm sure the car maker Tesla basically said this quote, and he said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. To understand the true nature of the universe, one must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Science works best when in harmony with nature. If we put these two together, we can discover great technologies that can only come about when the consciousness of the planet is ready to embrace them, like free energy. And what Tesla is saying is basically this. He is saying he is looking at nature, and he's saying there's so many secrets in nature about that are pointing in a direction that we, as the scientific community, has always been so hesitant to even use the word creator, God, or even have any experience in terms of creation, the idea of creation. But now in this revolution of consciousness, what's happening is things are pointing into there's more than the physical space. There's more to what we know, and it's pointing to the fact that there is mathematics, there is quantum physics that is actually pointing to the possibility of a creator. Why? Because there's an intelligent design. I work with a lot of creatives and painters and whatnot, and one of the things that you look for to see whether somebody has developed a certain language is you look for repeating patterns, a repeating language. You look for things that they have that's part of their vocabulary. They created a new visual vocabulary, and you look for that. And the same idea falls into the Fibonacci, the golden ratio, and the Fibonacci sequence in terms of mathematics. They're describing the fact that no matter how you look at the same thing, there's this hand that created it. There's a similarity in the thinking and the design sort of mechanics of how the designer designed it. And there's a certain perfection to it. There's things that just cannot be explained simply by what we know as in terms of material. And the reason why I'm showing intelligent design is because I saw this Darwin's Black Box, The Biochemical Challenge to Evolution, 1996. The American molecular biologist Michael Behe, the leading scientist spokesperson for intelligent design, offered 3 major examples of irreducibly complex systems that allegedly cannot be explained by natural means. One is the bacteria flagellum used for locomotion, the cascade of molecular reactions that occur in blood clotting or coagulation, and 3, the immune system. So the entire argument behind intelligent design is based on these 3 factors. And one of those factors is the immune system. They're mesmerized by the way the immune system works. They're mesmerized by the way the body can actually repair a cut. The body is such an intelligent machine that it's extraordinary. The experience each one of us has in terms of the body experience, in terms of dealing with bacteria, viruses, you name it. It is so absolutely phenomenal that we're not giving it enough credit, and we're not trusting our own sense of relationship with our own bodies. I had Lyme's disease, and for the first time, I had to contemplate whether I was going to listen to a doctor or not. So, so I looked for all kinds of different frequencies of how do I cure here, how do I do this? How do I do this? Because, I dealt with my mother being quite sick in terms of, so the doctors were saying one thing. They were saying, your mom's has 6 months. And then we said, well, okay, do they have the right to actually tell her that she has 6 months? So we decided, we listen to what you have to say. We're trusting that that's what you think, that's fine. But you know what? We're going to do more research, and we're going to actually just play with this whole space. We're going to find out what else can we do and just try it. We have nothing to lose. Because we are trusting the body's mechanism to heal. And that's something really important, something that we actually, there's such incredible design. You look around you, every leaf, the way the air works and the way the air is able to enter our nose and go into our lungs and actually give, help with the living body. It's pretty incredible. There's an intelligence there. No other human being, not even an expert, can tell you the condition of your body better than you can. Why? Because if you listen to it and you pay attention to it, it would tell you something's wrong. Have you ever actually gotten sick where there wasn't a point where you actually felt it? Ever? The body is made to protect itself and to throw away anything that the foreign that comes into it. It has that intelligence. We just need to listen to what our body's telling us. What does it need? So it takes into, do I understand my power? Is fear natural? Is fear natural for any of you? Any of you? Is fear natural for any of you?
I don't know, to be honest.
You don't know, yeah.
I felt it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the question is, is fear natural? I know we feel it, right? I think that probably there's none of us have not felt fear at one point or another, in one form or another, right? So we know what fear feels and looks, but do we know what fear actually creates in the physical body, in the mind, in the cardiovascular system?
I don't think it's natural. I think it's caused by the lack of something.
Yeah, so fear, so what are we lacking when we fear? What are we not understanding when we fear? So, but fear itself, that the energy and the thinking in fear, the fearful thinking, the fearful feeling, the fearful doing, actually creates against the body.
I feel like fear comes in some ways from this idea that we have to go somewhere, be something, or do something to have virtues or to be virtuous, kind of like what you were saying, which creates a endless quest that is anxious ridden and will lead to fear.
Yeah.
Our body is designed, our nervous system has sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So fear, sympathetic response to fear. And then our parasympathetic calms it down.
Yeah.
The body is designed to handle fear in a way.
Yeah. So our bodies are extraordinary. There's so much power there. Are we using it? Are we even, so remember, a word creates a belief system and then creates a world. So if I am living in fear, that's creating a vibration, it's creating a feeling, it's creating thoughts, and then it's creating realities. So the realities fear creates, it actually starts to weaken your immune system. And it creates more damage than you being afraid of being infected with something, of you being afraid of death. So the thought of fear, something that's not even near you, creates weaknesses in your system that ultimately leads to perhaps a debilitated system to the point where your body begins to break down. So it's really important for us to understand our bodies are built. And look at human history. We haven't done many things correct in this particular time. But there's a lot of stuff that we have done. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of new work in terms of the energetic body. How does that work? How does it repair? So think about this. The importance of moving away from fear is so important at this particular moment. Understanding the intelligence of our system to fight and counteract any type of infection is extraordinarily important. We need to shift to take away the word fear and replace it with something. I trust. What will you trust? You trust the expert who's telling you to fear? Or do you trust yourself because you know your body? You have experience with illness. You know the signals that your body tells you. There is no disease that is capable of entering your body without your body knowing it's there at this point in our history. The body knows when something foreign is there. The minute something foreign is there, it begins to battle it. The minute that it identifies, it actually creates defense mechanism against it. Whether it understands it or not, whether it fully can cure it and how quickly it can cure it, that's debatable. But we're afraid of something that has had numerous of success stories with just over-the-counter remedies. And this is, there's countless of cases that are in that situation. There was nothing else except your ability to remain positive and keep your immune system strong. That's the most important thing. Fear is debilitating. Let it go.
But considering that fear is an emotion, as so many things are, and the level of fear has to do in terms of the body and its ability to repair itself. The fear itself, there's levels to it in regards to who we are as human beings.
Yeah, yeah. There's many levels. The level that I'm speaking of is the level in which fear damages your system.
But the fear itself in regards to the body and the emotional aspect of it and the effect behind that, if the fear level is so where it has accumulated, where the body is so debilitated at the point where it cannot, function to that capacity to even recognize the fear level on the emotional level, then again, the fear is a buildup of any moment in time as to how I'm understanding something and how I'm processing it to even realize that the body is affected or, it's compromised or it's at the stage where it needs more help. And where does that come from? Is the fear still there where I can't see that, I can't experience it, I can't understand it? So again, the fear is the aspect where do I really have, how much am I aware of the fear, or have I been running on the fear of fear, whereby now the body is just totally damaged, and so that's the situation.
Yeah, that's a very individual question. That's a very individual space. Each one of us knows how much of a relation and how deep our relationship with this state of fear is. That's not something that any of us can answer for each other. Only you can. And so, but this is very important for us to understand. Fear, the state of fear, whatever the story you're fearing, creates damage to your system. It goes as deep as this impacts our thinking and decision-making in negative ways, leaving us susceptible to intense emotions and impulse reactions. All of these effects can leave us unable to act appropriately.
Is there, could you provide like a couple of actual exercises or actual practical things one can do to
Yes,
change?
absolutely. I'm actually going into that. So this, I just wanted to emphasize here, do you understand your power? And also, do you understand the relationship of fear that you have? And more importantly, do you understand the damages fear, the state of being in fear, happen, you know, how it causes on your body? And is this natural? Because many people actually have a belief that they believe that these mechanisms, fear is a natural occurrence in the body, in the system of consciousness, right? So if you believe that fear is a natural existence within the consciousness that you're living, then fear has a place. And if fear has a place in your everyday living, then guess what's going to happen? Debilitations of immune system that cause cardiovascular damage, gastrointestinal problems such as ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, and decreased fertility. It can lead to accelerated aging and even premature death. Long-term exposure to this state of fearing something, consequences of long-term fear include fatigue, clinical depression, and PSDT. So keeping those in mind, do we want to stay in that state? And how can we replace it?
I had one other question. Could
yes?
you also discuss not just fear for self, but fear for like your partner, fear for your kids? Could you also discuss that a bit?
It's the same. It's the same, but it comes from a different, you know, in this particular case, in this particular event, global event, our compassion and our love for each other is actually being utilized in order to create even more fear, and also to keep us in a state of feeling frozen. Because those of us who are not in the group, quote, predisposed group towards infection, are given the opportunity to show compassion for the ones that are in that condition, that are part of our loved ones and families. So fear is being fed. One way or another, it's a story that is created in order to create that fear, so in order for us to mechanize the action that is required. But it's not necessary. There's different ways of actually getting people to do something in more beautiful ways of being requested to do so, as opposed to inflicting fear upon a society, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So one of the beautiful things that's happening right now, as I said, biology, mathematics, even film, literature, artists are talking about this revolution that's occurring, right? Can you please just mute your microphone? Thank you. So in regard to this amazing thing about, we're talking about what creates consciousness, right? What creates the consciousness that I relate to, that I have created for myself, and that I'm actually in action with. And quantum physics is really interesting because it's actually saying this incredible thing. I regard consciousness as a fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative from consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. That's Max Planck, the theoretical physicist who originated quantum theory and won him the Nobel Prize. Basically, what he's saying is thought, the consciousness, the thought process, creates the matter, creates everything around us. And there's another statement, a fundamental conclusion of the new physics also acknowledges that the observer creates the reality. As observers, we are personally involved with the creation of our own reality. Physicists are being forced to admit that the universe is a mental construction. R.C. Henry, professor of physics and astronomy at Johns Hopkins University. And I have this image of what we refer to in Raj Yoga as the world cycle or world drama. And I find these two schools of thought to come into correlation with one another to the same point. From the image, you see consciousness, and it's the movement of consciousness from a pure state, the golden age, the yellow with the full tree, the healthy tree. Then you have the silver age, then you have the copper age, and then you have the tree that's pretty dead. And that's the iron age. And this actually is a map of the states of consciousness of humanity and the journey between this world cycle. And in that little white space, there's the space that is called the confluence age. And this is the confluence age where, you know, anything that's going to lead to self-awareness, self-acknowledgement for who you are is coming into a conversation in today's society. That's why we've had a rise of yoga. We've had a rise of different spiritual paths that are trying to lead us into a heightened state of understanding of ourselves beyond the physical body. And so I thought that it was really interesting that physics, quantum physics, is actually pointing to the fact that consciousness creates reality. Consciousness creates the state of the world, of my world, and the world at large. As a collective, if we have a certain consciousness, it creates either a golden aged consciousness, paradise, where the earth is flowing and everything is in harmony, or a degraded sense of consciousness where we feel ourselves that we're in, where the planet is actually suffering, and we as human beings are not only hurting the planet, but also hurting each other. So I found that this correlation of these two different pathways met. And they're speaking of the importance of thoughts and consciousness. Thoughts are extraordinarily important. Words are extraordinarily important. They create worlds. So where do we want to leap to? Where do we want to go from here? One person's decision triggers a collective experience of suffering and destruction like we are experiencing right now. It took one person. One person. It took one person. It takes one person to decide how the educational system is going to be. It takes one person to decide what we do about climate change. It takes one person to decide what we did with Iraq war. It took one person to decide what to lock it down, to stop. So each one of us are extraordinarily important because we're either going to participate in something we want to participate or something that's going to be nurturing and expansive, or something that's going to be limited. And in the same way that something destructive can occur, one person's decision triggers a collective experience of healing the planet. One person. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Tesla. I mean, you can go on and on and on from all the different cultures, the beautiful souls who took it upon themselves to be firm as to who they were and what they were standing for.
Okay, one person's decision triggers a collective experience. Example, Gandhi.
Thank you for translating. So here's something to contemplate. How many of you are familiar with the idea of soul or energy? Does anybody not have an experience with this idea of I am energy, I am soul, I am spirit, I am life force, I am whatever it is that you're calling it? Does anybody who is on not have an experience with this? So we're all okay with the concept or idea of soul energy, light energy.
Yes.
Okay. So from biology and from other fields of science, we are finding that they're also pointing in another direction. They're having the results that actually are indicating this incredible thing. So we're afraid of dying. Well, biologists are saying the following: biocentrism implies that death simply does not exist. It is an illusion which arises in the minds of people. It exists because people identify themselves with their body. They believe that the body is going to perish sooner or later, thinking that their consciousness will disappear too. In fact, consciousness exists outside of the constraints of time and space. Another one says, looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking in the radio for the announcer. So science on all these different directions are pointing away from life does not begin and it does not end here in the body, in this thing that we thought was the beginning and the end of things. What it is pointing is to another entity which actually governs the body. And this entity is looked at as light. And light, interesting thing about light is that it operates both as light, as a wave, and a particle. And that's pretty significant when you actually look at the ideas, even the mythology, in human mythology, human story. If you look at all the different cultures, when they describe spirit, it's always referred to from a perspective of light, some relationship of light. So it's really interesting how these modalities are pointing to us to expand beyond what we think we know and expand into the imagination. So here's another way of looking at it, the natural soul being, okay? So is it possible for us to, just for a moment, let go of everything we know and entertain a new idea? And the idea is very simple. We've already discussed all these different aspects of science actually pointing in certain directions, describing what these things are, right? So here's the mechanics that soul consciousness speaks of. So the soul, eternal, is eternal, and it's light energy. And the eternal resources are virtues: purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. The soul, in terms, and the body become resilient when they work together. So one is an eternal part of our being, and the other one is a temporal. It's the organic matter. That's what is born, lives, and then dies. But the eternal, the light energy, continues forever. And the integrated system is both the body, the soul working through the body in order to create action, to express itself. Two different forms. One is matter, organic matter. It has different laws to it. And the other one is light. And even those who are familiar with Dr. Dispenza, who is looking at healing, and he's basically describing this particular experience, but he still is engaging the power of the mind. So here's another frequency of thought, a new frequency of experiencing. Does anybody have any questions regarding this image? So ecosystem of the anatomy of the soul. So one, we know that there's different forms. One's matter, one's energy. But now we're going to look at the architecture of this system, the being. And why is it important for us to understand this? Because the deeper we go into understanding the architecture of the system called the being, the easier it is for us to fix it. When it feels a little broken, we can fix it. We can make adjustments. And the idea of actually, and then I will give you some tools of how to do that. Make adjustments. So the mechanics of the soul has actual aspects to it. So it's light. The soul has no gender. The soul uses the body and its sense organs to express itself in the physical dimension. The brain does not think. That's pretty revolutionary, right? The brain does not think. Thought waves originate from the soul's consciousness, mind, and flow into the brain and to ignite the neural pathways responsible for bodily functions, expression, and healing. The body has a gender. So the components of the soul, so the soul, the soul have a body, and the body has sense organs. So the soul have a conscious mind that creates thoughts, emotions, and desires. Then we have the intellect, which helps us decide, discriminate based on what we say we are about, our truths, our belief systems. So whatever's inside of us is in terms of knowledge, it will decide what to do in a particular event according to the knowledge that I've given it, and says, I believe this and I live by this. And then the subconscious mind, it stores memories, impressions, instincts, habits. All of these parts combine, create the soul. And together, they create the combined form and the experience of soul consciousness. So soul consciousness means to come to terms with all aspects of the self. The effort of soul consciousness is to use mind power to become neutral in the face of all the good and bad that arise within the soul. Soul consciousness means to become still and melt the effect of negativity, the weight that presses down upon the mind as a dark shadow of ill feelings, by maintaining a focus on the soul's original eternal condition of purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. Spiritual depletion occurs when the soul has acted against itself repeatedly. It goes back to fear. Fear is not natural to the system. Therefore, if you act in fear consistently, it depletes the energy of the soul. It depletes the energy of the body. And in soul consciousness, there's also this wonderful relationship that you're actually occurring with divine. Whatever divine means to you, in this particular form, we call it God, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, right? So you are forging a connection with the divine, the infinite source of energy, infinite source of knowledge. So there's this connection. So you're never alone, and you also have a way of feeling within yourself, and then also, if ever required, if necessary, to stay connected. Is there any questions with any of this? Okay, we're going to take a little traffic control. So breathe in and just allow yourself to feel the thoughts, the quality of the thought, just what it is, whatever is there, the feeling.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you please explain the depletion of the soul? Because I didn't get that.
Yes, can you just go into, would you kindly just go into a traffic control in terms of just taking account of your present moment, and then I'll be happy to answer that question.
Sure, of course, Sridhi. Thank you. Thank you.
So just take a minute to look at your thoughts, your feelings, and the way your body is being. How does it feel? Is it calm? So yes, spiritual depletion occurs when the soul has acted against itself repeatedly. So we said that the nature of the soul so the nature of the soul is its internal resources are virtues, right? Purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. When we go against that, in terms of our thinking, of our feeling, and our action, it depletes energy. And I'll go into that actually a little bit later, but just to answer your question, now that you have it, basically when you go against purity, when you go against peace, when you go against power, when you go against love, when you go against bliss in your thinking, feeling, or action, it creates a depletion of energy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. So how do we, now that we understand, here's the system, right? And again, this is not something for you, this is not necessary for it to be your system, but this is a contemplation of something to add to what you already do, or however it is that you want to utilize it. So soul conscious meditation is quite different from other forms. First of all, it's open-eyed. So you go into silence in order to use the power of your mind. Also, that's another thing that's very different in soul consciousness. You're using the power of your mind. Many practices actually want to go away from thought process and go into the quiet mind, right? So what we're doing is we're using the power of the mind to create the environment, the internal environment for healing to happen, for a natural personality to arise, our nature to arise, to discover newness, to energize, to create new perspective. Sometimes our perspective is too locked. So we go into silence, soul conscious meditation, just the power of the mind to be still, to be open, so that we can purify the moment, the thought, the feeling, the action, to awaken, to clarify, to become clear, to heal, to visualize new possibilities, to release the waste, to release the blockage, to have a connection to our eternal self, not just our temporal self, the body, to connect to the divine, to be at balance, to be at peace. So meditation is going into the silence of yourself so you can hear all the sound, all the songs, everything that exists there is important for you to face it, to be with it. Why? Because in order for you to achieve deeper and deeper states of connection with yourself, you have to let go of everything that's in your way. The thoughts that are waste, the feelings that are waste, the memories that are waste, that are coming up. So meditation, soul conscious meditation, is going into silence to use the power. The mind does not come from the brain. This is the power of the soul, the power of the mind that's part of the soul. To be in yoga, to be in connection with the pure self, yourself, the pure you, and then also to create connection with divine force. And also the meditation, in terms of consciousness meditation, there's no ritual, there's no mantra. You're using knowledge, spiritual knowledge, to actually create the right environment to have the experience. You go into silence, not to silence whatever's there, but actually to look at it, to become aware of whatever is troubling, whatever's an obstacle for you to go deeper into the connection with your natural self, the pure self. So you don't need a special environment, you don't need music, you don't need anything. It's actually an internal environment that you are looking to create. You're going beyond the sound. Anything that could disturb you, a revolution can be going around you, but you're still in silence, internal silence. It's about creating that kind of power of the mind, to be able to shift it, switch it like a light switch, on and off in an instant. So that's why open eye meditation, so that you can maintain the awareness of where you are in the physical world, because that's also important. You maintain awareness that you're in the body, and this is your instrument, and you're also maintaining awareness of the deeper truth, the deeper pure self, the energy, the energizer. Can anybody tell me what eat pure high vibrational food? That's something to maintain both the body and the soul. Can anybody tell me what high vibrational food is?
Chirimoyas.
Chirimoyas, yes. Those are very high vibration. Anyone else? High vibration food, most of us have a relationship with food where we are consuming.
Fresh foods, fresh vegetables.
What is it? What did you say? Can whoever spoke repeat what they said?
I would say like live food, fresh vegetables.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, the freshness is extraordinarily important because they have the highest number of nutrients. But there's another step to high vibrational food. There is there's a practice where you actually take the food and you do an offering to divine force. And what you're doing is you're infusing it with good vibrations. So before you eat it, you're actually using the power of the mind, the vibrational power of the mind, and you're infusing the food with power. So in that same way, that food is not only giving nutrition to the body because it's fresh and it doesn't have chemicals, it's not processed. So it's giving nutrition to the body because the body remains resilient if you give it good food and you nurture it. And in the same way, the soul also needs to be nurtured. So it's not just about the vegetables that you're infusing with power and vibration. It's the military helicopter going over my head. So, but it's the soul, actually, the soul wants to eat too. And what does it eat? It eats good thoughts. It feeds off positive feelings. It feeds off of positive actions. And also, very importantly, it feeds off positive, nurturing knowledge. So if you spend the last, 10 years looking at the Walking Dead or apocalyptic, movies and series or movies of the end of the world for a long period of time, guess what that's done to you? It's affected your reality. It's food. So we have to be aware of these different levels of how we are functioning. One is on a physical level, as we said, the body needs to be nurtured and taken care of. It's an extraordinary machine. It's a biological system. It's resilient. It's powerful because it has innately a defense mechanism. And then we have to also remember the other part of ourselves, which is the energy being. And how do we feed that energy being? We feed it with positive knowledge. So we are careful with the kind of stuff that goes in through our senses, right? We want to maintain the system, and the whole system itself is the soul, the light energy, the body, right? Integrated. So being aware of that becomes very important. Only work with what is in your control. Does anybody want to read this? What does it say to you? Anybody want to give it a try? What is it saying to you? How are you taking in this information? Remember, we're listening, and now we're using our eyes. And how does that create for you? So anybody want to give it a try?
Nature, powers of the soul, purity, peace, spiritual power, love, and bliss. How you filter the outer influences, events into your inner system, and how you process the event.
Yeah. So one thing that's always in our control is how we allow things into our system. And one of the things we do before that is it's really important that we never make assumptions, because the minute we make assumptions, it's going to actually affect the entire process of how we are creating. So the way we intake, how I see it, hear it, feel it. So if I just see it, hear it, and feel it without actually bringing it in through a filter of a quality, what happens? So if the person is giving me something negative, so it's just going in. That negative energy, that negative vibration is just entering your system. So a way of protecting yourself from these kind of forces is you center yourself. You say, I am here, I, the soul, the pure being, am listening with purity. So now the negativity is not going to affect me. So with purity, I'm going to look at this, understand it. So I'm going to process it, bring it, give it form and meaning to it. Kind of like active listening, right? You're going to bring form and meaning to it, and then you're going to create a story about it. But if the story is corrupted by the negativity that's bringing in, guess what's happened? It's already corrupting your system. So it's really important for us to understand, I have the power of controlling the way something enters me by actually creating an understanding of who it's entering. I am peace, I am love, I am bliss, I am compassion, I am truth. I am truth, and I am allowing an idea to enter me. So I'm looking at it through the filter of truth. I'm processing it through the filter of truth. I'm bringing form and meaning through truth. I then tell the story, I bring it out, I communicate that truth the way I understood it, and I communicate it outward. So I put it out through my tongue, through my eyes, through my vibration. And then that experience is stored in the memory, in the soul. Remember, all this is happening as a process of both the soul and the body. So what's in my control? The way I intake a story, the way I filter the story, what quality am I filtering it through? So if I filter an event through anger, what's going to happen? Anyone?
Output will be angry.
Yeah. So if I filter it through I am peace, what's going to happen?
Output will be peaceful.
Yeah. So it's very simple, actually. It's not complicated, right? Does this sound complicated? It's actually really simple. The commitment comes from you actually committing to be peace. I am peace in life. I am peace in my conversation. I am peace in my listening. I am peace in my speech. I am peace in my doing. Not I have, right? Because then you have to assure that you have it in that moment. But in fact, it's part of your nature. Every virtue is part of your nature. So you don't never have to look for it somewhere. You don't have to look for love outside. It's already inside of you. So you connect to, I am love. Seeing with these eyes. I am love. Listening with these ears. I am love speaking, and I am love doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that understood?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thanks.
So there's things to remember. So there's little reminders. We forget to be present. We forget to be aware because we get distracted. So remind yourself, I can only experience what I give myself permission to think, feel, do, or be. And these moments, as we've been practicing through this whole process of stopping, did you ever really think that you can stop? I mean, I have this practice, and I've been practicing it for a very long time. And whether I am conducting a business conversation or I am wherever I am, I literally stop myself. And at times, it's not necessary for me to stop myself externally, but it's about stopping yourself consciously. So I go inward, I switch from where I am, paying attention to the person, to here I'm paying attention to my inner self. I switch my mind to look inward as opposed to outward. So I stop. So traffic control, and any moment that you feel like you're going out of yourself, you immediately stop that energy, because that energy, remember, words create worlds. The vibration that you hold will corrupt your entire inner being for that time that you hold that thought. So it's up to you. So you have to become, it's important to be aware, pay attention. So go inward, silence the mind. The mind will listen. As you practice this, I have the experience that the mind becomes your best friend. It is true. The mind is a quiet place. Trust. So go inward, trust the silence, the mind. Trust the silence, the mind that is part of I, the soul. Notice the quality of your thoughts, feelings, and actions from time to time. And what I do is, in traffic control, I usually do it on the hour, every hour. And it's just to create a playfulness, and also just to it's a choice. Do I want to be consistently my best? And do I want to create my best possibility of myself? That's a commitment. So in leaping forward, we have to commit to new things. Not with the outer world necessarily to start, but first start with new commitments to myself. How do I want to leap forward within me? How do I want to create commitments that are long-lasting? Not like New Year's resolutions, which sometimes last only a couple of days. So contemplate that. Stop inward, go inward, Silence the mind. Notice the quality of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Check. You're in control. Check. Ask, am I aligned with my self-respect and virtues? Purity, peace, power, love, and bliss. Check. Is this thought the kind of thought that I want? Is this the quality that I want to hold? Is this the feeling that I want to create? What action will represent my alignment, my self-respect? So change. You take this, you stop it, you check to check alignment, and you make necessary changes in that second. It doesn't take a long period of time. It's a second. You're that quick. You're that intelligent. You're that capable. You have to trust. So you refocus your thoughts and intention by remembering who you are and your nature. Remain in the seat of your self-respect. And that's what self-respect means. I remain aware. I remain aware that I am fully aligned with my nature. And I act upon that alignment. Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Yes.
So remain aware. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's an interesting part of the conversation, because we need to understand the relationship of the beginning and the end. So remain aware. Thoughts, ideas create feelings. They turn into actions, and then those actions turn into memories, which are stored in the soul. Every thought, feeling, and action is stored as a karmic account. And these are not just thoughts and feelings, ideas that you created and did not speak or did not create further. Those are every idea that you had, every intention that you felt is recorded. So keep this in mind. It's really easy. The thing about this practice is that I find it super easy, because if you practice it and you make it part of your lifestyle, part of your conversation, part of your doing, part of your processing, it just becomes really easy. I am the creator. So just keep these things in mind. These are like your mantras. I am the creator of my thoughts. I am responsible for the quality of my thoughts. I have the power to change my thoughts. Trust yourself. I am the master creator of solutions. Whenever there's an obstacle, I have faith, I have trust that I can come up with a solution. And pay attention. Remain aware. Does this thought energize me, or does it deplete me? Does it go against peace? Does it go against love? Does it go against my virtues? That's a really easy way to check. And it doesn't take a lot of time. You're really quick. The capacity that we have hasn't been exercised. We're using so little of our capacity. Let us use some more. Let us leap forward and give ourselves the opportunity to really exercise our power. So just remember, thoughts, words create worlds. So if I'm toying around with the thought, pay attention to that thought and how is it created? How is it going to create? How does it create? Does anybody want to give an example of something that they are sort of struggling with, a thought, an idea, a word, a belief system that they're struggling with at the moment that can be utilized as an experience here? Anybody who's brave enough?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sometimes, with my kids, they answer in a bad manner, and I tend to say, you disrespecting me. So I would like for you to touch up a little bit how to deal with it when somebody is quote unquote disrespecting you. Thank you.
Yeah. So the first part of that is my thinking correct? So so the first thing that we do is we don't look at what somebody else is doing. What am I doing in this relationship? What am I doing in this conversation? What's my participation? That's the only thing you're responsible for, because the other thing is out of your control, right? Can you control the other person? Can you control the way they think? Can you control the way they feel? Can you control the way they are? No. So the only thing that we can control, and we have to work only with those things that we can control, is the way I am being. So first of all, so how are you being in this conversation? I'm expecting something from them. Right? I'm respecting respect. So ask yourself, why am I respecting respect when respect is already inside of me? Am I connecting to my self-respect? So part of it is to actually really look into how am I in this conversation. The first part is, am I connected to my own self-respect? And if I am, then let me look at this situation from the perspective of I am full of self-respect. And therefore, I'm going to give this soul the respect of them having their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Because I can't control them anyways, right? So what we can do is uplift them. And the way we uplift them is to have pure sight, pure vision. How do we have pure vision? So we remember that what's that system there? There's a body, and in this particular time, they're playing a role with me. They're my child. But this being is actually ancient. It's been around for a long time. It has its own wisdom. So I'm going to look at them from the perspective of that ancient wisdom, that infinite wisdom. And I'm going to say, well, this is where they are right now. But what I can do is I can change the way that I'm saying. So if I see somebody as being disrespectful, what am I creating? You're creating the energy of disrespect yourself. So instead, elevate them. My child is in this particular moment is in this state, but I understand that they're full of respect. My child is a respectful being. Hold that. Be patient. Keep holding that. That's the only way to elevate them, through your own vibration, to actually elevate their state of being. So that's how mind power works. I create a thought that creates what I want to create and want to experience, and then I vibrate that out into the world, and I create the relationship with that and others in that way. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So give attention to the types of thoughts produced. Something that we don't go into too much is sometimes we don't understand what that means. A thought is a thought is a thought is a thought, we think, right? But there are different types of thoughts that produce different outcomes. So a pure, powerful, positive thought is a thought that comes from no attachment or expectation. It's grounded in virtues and elevated principles. It's grounded from I am a soul that's complete and full. I have something to offer, not something to give. Negative thought, ego, it comes from ego, anger, greed, hatred, judgment, resentment, fear, rejection, criticism. Waste, focuses on things not in your control, past or future. and necessary is neutral, necessary or neutral, related to actions, responsibilities, information, or experience. The one thing to always keep in mind when it comes to thoughts is don't take anything personally. So in our relationships, the first thing that happens is I took it personally. They disrespected me. So check that you are not taking things personally and you look at it from a distance, from a witness perspective, from a detached perspective. And you look at it from I the soul am looking in this condition. I the soul who is peaceful. I the soul who is loving. And then I create from that space. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oops. So karma is really interesting because you're in control of your karma, right? And the main thing to keep in terms of your of karma is no one else has the power to pardon, release me from guilt, obligation, and punishment for my doings. No one. Not a guru, not a spiritual teacher, no one. Right? Keep that in mind. I'm always going to be, so here's something to keep in, to repeat to yourself, even in meditation. This can be an interesting meditation. I receive that which I give, right? I give and I receive exactly what I give. That's the law of karma. I use spiritual knowledge based on universal truths to ground my thinking. I am peace, I am love, I am bliss, and every other virtue that comes from that. So practice that. I am. I pay attention to my true intention in the moments. That's important. Karma does not look at the act that you do, but the intention in which you do it. I am responsible for my thoughts, feelings, and actions. There's no one to blame. I'm ever ready to face the cause and effect of my being. I have the power and courage to be with what I have created. I receive all obstacles and challenges as gifts. You come to a point in life when you deal with all this stuff and you begin to really feel the energy of you in its full power, and then literally obstacles become like toys because they are engaging your creativity, they're engaging the inside of you that is weak and needs to be elevated. So they're there to teach you something and to empower capacities that are weak. I create my inner and outer circumstance. No one to blame. No excuse for what I'm experiencing. I am the creator. And this is absolutely important. The idea of mistakes is waste thought. Understand that whenever you are doing something, you did it to the best of your capacity. Whether it needs correction later, in terms of you reflecting back on it and saying, you know, I needed to be a little bit more blah. You know, I needed to, but it happened perfectly. Don't spend time going back. Don't look at it. Accept it just the way it happened. I always do my best. Trust yourself. Trust that you are always doing to the best of your capacity. And then balance your time. What does that mean? Balance my time. your relationship with time. I mean, right now it's interesting because we are creating these experiences with people from all over, all over the globe, and we're realizing, at least, it becomes more, it gets thrusted into our consciousness that we think in absolute time, right? But it's all relative, because set 4 o'clock here and 7 o'clock in New York, and so there's all these time frequencies. But the thing that I am speaking of in terms of time is past, present, and future. So everything that's happened already that you've created is finished. There's nothing to do there. I recognize that nothing of what has already happened can be changed. I release it. I let it go. Present is molded by my spiritual awareness in the moment, infused with spiritual knowledge. I create accurate thoughts, feelings, and actions. I remain in my self-respect and empower peace of mind and happiness. So if you're present in the moment and you're acting out of your alignment with your virtues, and you're sitting in your self-respect, that automatically creates the future. There's no need to worry about the future. Remain here now. Create beautifully. Leap forward into the future, knowing that your actions today has created freedom, that your actions today has created clarity, that your actions today have created courage, that your actions today created a vision of the world in which you want to participate, not in a world that has been thrusted upon you. We are all creators. It's very important for us to keep that in mind. We're all participating, both as independent creators and also a collective of creators. Keep in mind, in terms of the collective creation we want to experience, it's our responsibility to pay attention. So the future, so are we going to live in the fear of perhaps another virus or another disease or another something to come and attack us, and therefore we're going to retreat and hide away because we don't trust that this amazing miracle called the body and the combination of the body and the spiritual energy together create this powerful space that's resilient, healing, with experience?
Om Shanti, brother.
So in terms of this, can somebody take the time to just read what if you find yourself reliving past events, which happens a lot? Does anybody have that experience?
Yes.
Anyone? Huh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what do we do about those events that keep coming up in our minds? Some of them might be beautiful, but most of the time they tend to be a little bit disturbing, or also they take us back in time to a space, and sometimes it creates sorrow, suffering, pain. How do we deal with that, right?
Brother Shanti, we have this is the meditation time. We were supposed to start at 6:30, but
oh, we did?
yeah, so that's the regular timing.
Okay, oh, it is. I thought it was 7. Sorry.
Yeah, I can try to finish as soon as possible. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for the timing.
Sure.
So let's just deal with this in terms of, so here's how we can deal with that from a perspective of what we just went through. So while in silence meditation, I churn, contemplate spiritual knowledge to awaken my spiritual insight. Self-love, respect, and courage emerge, and I begin to let go of my painful, perceptions, relationships with their traumatic event situation. The roots of suffering are uprooted. It means that you're going to look at it, you're going to face it, and you're going to put the idea of past, present, and future. So if it's in the past, it's done. You let it go. What you need to heal is the relationship, the story you've created with it. So take time, be patient, be loving in this process. It may take more than one try to heal it. Take the time to, in meditation, look at it. Emerge self-love, emerge self-respect. See what is being triggered. What is the weak element there that needs to be strengthened in yourself? So I let go of I am a victim. I embrace the gift in this. So take time to notice that it's a gift there for you to find benefit. How can I grow? I choose to reclaim my peace of mind and happiness. It's part of healing. Let go of the victim.
No.
Strengthen the weakness that it's pointing to. I activate spiritual knowledge to heal and allow inner wisdom to arise. I transform trauma into a spiritual gift of learning that empowers. So first you look at it, you put it in perspective, past, present, and future. You say past, it's done. I cannot change anything of what actually happened, but I can change about the story I've created and my relationship with it. And then you infuse it. Which of these aspects of myself need to be strengthened? Self-love, respect, courage, right? So which virtue is weakened and needs to elevate? And you always let go of I am a victim. Remember, nobody's responsible for any thought, feeling, or action that you are experiencing yourself. You are the creator. And then when you do this process, it actually will be stored away as a memory, and a memory that will actually create power for you and no longer create pain. So so the leap forward that I engage you with is the question of whatever your practice is, and whatever any of this information that has been shared and the experiences that we've had that you want to take along with you, it's up to you. But the question is, do you and are you able to envision yourself in a better position, in a better world, more aligned with what you say you believe in? I've shown you a space of practice where you are literally coming to terms with all aspects of yourself. The body and all of its facilities, the soul and all of its facilities and abilities, and combine between this body and soul, and then more importantly, how the practice actually connects you to divine force, even more power. And when you do that, fear becomes it no longer becomes part of your vocabulary. Trust sits in that space, and it actually empowers and heals you. The world that we create together from that space can become paradise, a playful playground. But that's going to be our choice. Are we going to stay and be told what the story for tomorrow will be? Or are we going to create it internally for ourselves first and then collectively join together as a collective, have a collective vision of pure energy, of harmony with nature, of harmony with each other, of understanding our capacity to heal, to be resilient. So that's that. I really thank you all for participating. First of all, before I close, is there any question?
No.
Okay, so
I'm just wondering if there's any place to maybe read and review some of this content.
Yeah, if you have questions and you have specific questions and stuff, just feel free to email me. It's my email's there on the screen. And also,
have you published any of it anywhere?
It's actually going to be, that's in process.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, so for information regarding the calendar and classes of events at the Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University, just email that and they'll send you the calendar for more classes, and go into detail if you ever are curious about looking into this type of processing of yourself and the universe. So it's up to you. And if you have any questions regarding the material presented, please let me know. The email's on the screen. And I thank you so much. And I'll just take one moment to close in silence. Will go with you and really put it into practice, because it's so powerful, especially right now. It's extraordinarily healing that we listen to each other with respect. And even though we may not have agreement with our ideas, to listen in a respectful, loving way where people can speak their minds, because it's part of healing. People are just looking for a place and for others to speak with in terms of expressing how they feel, how they think, and how they are being physically. So may you all be those that environment for yourself and also others, and keep those beautiful ways of listening, deep listening, and active listening, active in the world. All right, and may you all remain well and really connect to your inner powers. Trust yourselves. Thank you again.
Thank you.